Hey, welcome everybody to this edition of the Ranting Cast. This is Ranting Ron. I am back after my 1 week vacation, and it's great to be back. Frank, thank you so much for taking over the show last week. I hope you had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, Dylan and I had a great time. It was really fun.
All right, that's awesome. And our guest tonight, all the way from Montreal, from the Hockey Writers, is Ryan Szporer. Ryan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Oh no, girl, it's actually our pleasure. It's just great. Yeah, it's great having other people from other cities, other countries in the hockey community just talking hockey. So, so tell us how long you been with the Hockey Writers. What do you like to write about?
Yeah, so I'm the lead Montreal Canadiens columnist at the Hockey Writers. I guess my claim to fame up to this point in my career is I was a credited member of the press for the Stanley Cup Final last playoffs. So I was actually in the building, which was a huge honor. And unfortunately, the Canadiens lost, obviously, but nevertheless, a highlight of my career up to this point.
Yeah, I bet you never thought that they'd go to the finals last year after just getting in, but they did, and it was an incredible run. Probably Carey Price's greatest moment.
Oh, I mean,
It's up. I mean, it's up there.
he won, sure. I mean, he was a shoe-in for the Conn Smythe, had the Canadians pulled off the humongous upset.
Oh
I'd
yeah.
say up to this point in his career, it's still the Vezina and Hart Memorial Trophy season.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's definitely like his top moment of his career. But I mean, even for you, just being able to be in the building for that, for the Stanley Cup in Montreal is, you, as you just said, is definitely a high honor, especially with just how everything has been the last couple of years with COVID restrictions and everything, and only having so few people in the buildings. I mean, being one of the lucky ones to be there is definitely got to be something. I can only imagine how loud that place would have been if it was sold out.
It was pretty loud, with just I
Yeah,
say like 3,500, maybe 5,000 people in it. I was an exclusive company for sure, which is again, like you said, an honor. But yeah, it was pretty loud for sure, just because the Canadians hadn't been to the finals since 1993, so
yep.
a lot of fans were kind of making the most of the moment.
Frank, who'd they lose to in '93? I'm sorry, no, they won.
As I
Who
say,
they?
they beat LA.
Yeah, they beat LA. Sorry, no.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
I
the
think
year
that
that
was a
they played the Sabres in the second round. Every score was 4 to
yeah.
3. The last three in overtime. Yes, that was a great series. So Ryan, I brought you on because I read an article you wrote a couple months ago, and since then you said you had to update a little bit. But there's biggest concern probably for the Sabres right now going into next year would be the goaltending situation. Our defense seems to they got a good hold on what they want to do with the defense. Our forwards, for the most part, we believe Quinn and Paterka will be up here next year. So all that stuff seems to be they seem to got like a path. But goaltending, we have zero. And nothing against Anderson Tokarski, but Anderson, he brought the tablets down from the mountain. So, with Moses. So he doesn't, he played fine, but he's 41, going to be 42 years old. Tokarski's he's really a backup in the AHL goalie. And hey, give him credit. He played good. UPL consistently gets hurt, and I never believed injury prone, but this guy's just been beat up. Oh, he got hurt again. The last game. It's like, our two guys that we thought might be in the system, at least one of them, both went back to college. So I brought you on to talk about maybe goalies that might be available in trade, or UFA doesn't look that great. So I'm going to hand it off to you. What can Buffalo do to shore up the goaltending?
I think that they're only the best options are actually via free agency. I mean, I'll rattle off three names for you: Darcy Kemper of the Colorado Avalanche, Jack Campbell of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Ville Husso of the St. Louis Blues. I think those are the three best options facing, or for any team looking for goaltending next season. So, yeah, I mean, of those, I think the best bet is Ville Husso, just because of his age. He's 27, if memory serves.
Yep.
And it is a small sample size in terms of his success to date, but I feel as though he also has the most upside of the three. And you have to remember that the St. Louis Blues they gave Jordan Binnington a huge contract last season.
Yep.
So they're, ideally, they trade Binnington and keep Husso, who's an unrestricted free agency for the record. But like, who are they going to trade Binnington to? Who's going to take on that contract, which is a 6-year, $36 million deal? Like that's
Buffalo. We got a lot of cap space.
Yeah, you do, but would you want Binnington? That's the question. I'm sure you get him cheap if you're willing to deal with the
I think the real question for St. Louis is how much are they giving up for a team to take Binnington at this point?
How old is he?
Oh, Binnington's in his late 20s, I believe.
Okay.
I'm gonna double check really quick. I'm gonna look it up.
So let's talk about Husso for a minute. So he's a UFA. First of all, would you want to come to Buffalo? How many teams are we looking for goalies? Again, we are like 40 million under the cap. I don't know, some crazy number under the cap floor. So of course, you don't want to just spend it too freely and give away Bobrovsky type contracts. But what do you think it would take to get Husso in Buffalo?
I'm just thinking back to when the Coyotes acquired Antti Raanta from the New York Rangers for him to be, their starter for all intents and purposes. And I'm looking up the contract right now, actually. He got a cap hit of $4.25 million a year as a backup turned starter, and that was a few years ago. So adjusting for inflation, maybe you'd be lucky to get Husso for 4.5. Again, it's small size, so it's hard to assess.
He signed a 3-year deal at the time.
Raanta did, yeah.
Raanta signed a 3-year deal, yeah.
They're both finished too. I don't know what that's worth, but
and Raanta was already under contract at the time of the trade because he was traded in 2017, and he already had a year left on his deal at the time, and then that was another. And then he re-signed 3 years with Arizona. So I guess the thing with Husso is, like, would he want to come here? Potentially, because there's only so many starter positions available in the league. But at the same time, if he had success with St. Louis in the playoffs, I don't see how St. Louis isn't doing everything they can to get out of Binnington's contract, so that I think they would sign Husso first and then just try to trade Binnington throughout the summer and everything. They may even be willing to sign Husso to like a 3 or 4 year deal at like maybe they get a little discount and get $4 million a year, and then just try to trade Binnington no matter how long it takes.
I mean, that would be the ideal scenario, obviously, to keep Husso in the fold. I just there's kind of like blood in the water, I think, where teams sense that how desperate they would be.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Husso is a UFA, so I think kind of like he has all the leverage. So regardless of what happens, he's going to test the market. I feel he's going to hit free agency. He's not going to wait.
Yeah,
he's not going to like sign beforehand with Blues. He's going to see what's out there.
Yeah, and I haven't really thought of Campbell and Kemper as options because I really feel like the Toronto and Colorado are going to re-sign both of them too. I mean, the leverage is obviously one thing that all three of the players have for their teams, but if you're Toronto, how can you bet on getting a better goalie than Campbell? And obviously he's had his struggles this season. He got hurt, but he was really good down the stretch, and he had that ungodly November as well. I think he was at like a 930 or 940 save percentage in November, but then most of the season he was around 900 or sub 900.
Put him behind our defense, right?
No. But even then it's like if you're the Leafs, I mean, you still have Peter Mrazek. Are you willing to go into the season with Peter Mrazek and another goalie that you either sign from free agency or you trade for? I don't know if you want to do that if you're Toronto. And Colorado, I mean, they traded a first-round pick and a pretty good prospect defenseman in Connor Timmins for Kemper. And I just don't see same thing. I just don't see a scenario how they let him walk, and he had a good year for them too, unless that they really think they can do better. And that goes for all three teams. If they really think they can do better than those three guys, then I think that they'll do that. But I have a hard time seeing, how any of those teams would really feel like they could do better. Toronto would be the only one I can potentially see.
Toronto probably. I mean, there are question marks surrounding Campbell and his consistency, shall we say?
Yeah.
Even though he's been fairly solid, the last few years for Toronto, there's no disputing that. But the Campbell is also going to be looking for a raise, and I just don't know how much Toronto. I mean, I'm looking at the cap friendly page right now. Technically they're above the $81.5 million cap, and Campbell's has a cap hit of 165 right now. He's going to be looking at $4 million at least next season. I mean, he could get that easily. So who are you going to trade?
What about Ryan Fleury? I'm sorry, Marc-Andre Fleury.
The question is, does Marc-Andre Fleury want to come back? Continue playing? He's 37, and he's been traded like 10 times the last few years. It seems like. I don't want to speak for him, obviously.
Right.
Because, there's a good chance he wants to keep playing, and he did win the Vezina last year. His stats kind of took a bit of a tumble this year, but that was to be expected. Whatever happened. So for all intents and purposes, he's still capable. He's still going to get an offer if he chooses to play. But I don't see him being, because he's 37. I don't see him as being anyone's best option.
Is there anybody? Go ahead, Frank.
I was gonna say the age does definitely concern, and also too. I mean, I really feel like if Fleury is gonna play next season, he's gonna want to still play for a contender. I don't really see why he would want to go to a team that's well considered rebuilding still. Like the Sabres aren't a consistent contender, so it's hard. It's going to be hard for them to lure a guy like Fleury here. Obviously, we have Alex Tuch, and him and Fleury go back to their, with all their success in Vegas, but that's about it. But you can't bank on that as being a reason why Fleury would come here. It's just not guaranteed,
unless nobody else wants him.
That's the thing. If he doesn't get an offer at all from any team, then it's certainly there.
If Buffalo's interested in him, even
I would imagine Buffalo would be.
I'm sure Fleury will get offers from contenders.
Yeah, that's the thing,
and short-term offers as well, like just for a single year, which may be right up his alley because I'm sure he doesn't want to commit long-term at this point.
I think there's a chance he stays in Minnesota.
Possibly. I mean, Minnesota has proven to be.
Obviously, money's going to matter because Minnesota is going to be in such a cap strap next season because of the Suter and Parise buyouts.
Yep.
But if Fleury takes a cheap deal to stay, knowing that that's a contender that can win, I mean, it's certainly something to think about.
I guess it all depends on Minnesota's postseason, and it also depends on what role Fleury would want to play if he'd accept being a backup, because and if Cam Talbot gets lion's share of starts this postseason, there are a lot of variables, balls up in the air.
There are, and it might make a little sense because Talbot's only got 1 year left on his deal after this season. And obviously too, Minnesota, if we're looking towards the future for Minnesota, we got to remember they drafted Jesper Wallstedt last year in the first round. So, at some point in the next 2 to 3 years, probably he's going to be there.
That's probably part of the reason. Sorry to interrupt, but that's probably part of the reason why they felt comfortable dealing Kaapo Kähkönen to the San Jose Sharks.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And
I don't think Kähkönen, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I apologize. I don't think Kähkönen has been anyone's idea of, like a superstar goalie, but, he is someone else who, is kind of like a decent Band-Aid, potentially. I mean, you mentioned Luukkonen, right? He's your top prospect. maybe someone who could, fill the gap until he's ready.
See,
Who knows?
that's kind of what I'm looking for the Sabres in goaltending is like that 1A 1B to pair with Luukkonen next season. And Kakkonen actually was one of those guys I was looking at and thinking, yeah, I would make that move for Kakkonen and try that out. Now that he's in San Jose, I don't really see that as an option. Now that but as well, now that he's in San Jose, maybe another option would be James Reimer, who has 1 year left on his deal. He is up there in age, but he's actually had a pretty good year this year for the Sharks because they're going to have Kakkonen's going to need a new contract for the Sharks, but then they have Aiden Hill too. So maybe if they want to move on from Reimer or they maybe move on from Hill, one of them, I would hope they'd rather move on from Reimer because I like Reimer a little more than I do Aiden Hill, but maybe that's your target if you're the Sabres for a team for a goaltender, really. I mean, I've always been on the Varlamov train, but I'm not sure if the Islanders are going to trade him. And even if Varlamov would want to accept a trade here, so maybe the Sharks are the team that we should be looking at. Even though obviously the talk recently has been, I don't know if you've seen Sabres Twitter, Ryan, it's been mostly, do you make an offer for John Gibson or do you make an offer for Connor Hellebuck?
Because the Jets are obviously rebuilding now that Mark Scheifele has kind of abandoned ship, right?
It almost seems like that, but even then, I don't know if the Jets would, even if the Jets go into rebuild, I don't know if they're trading Hellebuck still.
They could get a lot for him, that's for sure.
You can.
In my opinion, if you're James Reimer, in theory, is a good option. He's been consistently average to slightly above average over the course of his career as, a starting goaltender, 1B for all intents and purposes. But like Varlamov, he has no trade clause.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure he didn't sign with San Jose just to be moved. It's probably a discussion worth having. Who knows? But I mean, in my opinion, if you're, gonna, if you're gonna have a conversation with regard to one of those two guys, Varlamov or Reimer, I think Varlamov is the better bet, personally. Just for the simple reason that obviously the Islanders have Sorokin, and he's established himself as, the undisputed number one goalie over there. And, Varlamov, he's not old. I mean, early 30s. And he could probably, I don't even know how many years he has left. 1 year left under contract at $5 million. That's Varlamov.
That's pretty good.
So he also presents himself as kind of a Band-Aid stopgap type of measure.
Yeah, that's why he's been my favorite trade target. It's obviously, and for both, as you just said, for both Reimer and Varlamov, it's just the no trade clause that kind of gets in the way of it. That's the issue that I kind of have. But I mean, it's gonna have to be one. It's probably gonna be one of those guys. I mean, besides like any of the other names that we've mentioned, I don't really see a team that's gonna be looking to move a goalie this offseason, whether it's from trade, and even the other UFA goalie options just don't really appease me that much.
Is there a goalie in the minors that another team that he probably can be a really good backup to a starter somewhere, but because that team's already kind of a little bit heavy in the goaltending situation, that they, playing in the minors, that maybe Buffalo can look at trading for? I don't even have a name in my head. Is there a team that you sit there and say, oh, that goalie down there for the Long Island Ducks is like really good. He's ready to hit the NHL, but that team, there's just no room for him. Is there any goalie out there like that Buffalo could be looking at? Or wasn't there a free agent goalie from college that was undrafted that just was, I can't even think of his name. You might know it, Frank. Just there's got to be a goalie somewhere.
So in terms of like college goalies, I think you're thinking of Strauss-Mann. I think
yes, that's
Strauss-Mann signed with the Sharks. He signed a contract with them, and then Dryden McKay, who won the Hobey Baker, signed with the Leafs. So those guys are out. Those guys are out now. That's why I think like the San Jose trade option kind of makes a lot more sense because now
or Campbell from Toronto now. So
I don't know
nobody in the
because
minors.
I don't think McKay plays in the NHL next season unless there's an injury. So Toronto's still going to need at least a starting goalie, and they're probably going to try like the goalies that are going to be available for trade are going to be ones who teams are looking to get out of their contracts with. You know, that's why Binnington's going to be there. I think Aiden Hill's going to be there for the Sharks. I think they're going to want to move on from him. And then Peter Mrazek from Toronto as well. I really don't see any other. I don't know. Or I guess Samsonov as well from Washington would be another guy I could think of. But these are goalies who I'm just not that impressed with. And I think you're almost you're borderline downgrading in net if you're the Sabres and you're trading for one of those guys.
Go ahead, Ryan. You say, is there anybody even in the minors that some team has some really good backup, but he's not ready for them yet?
I mean, I'm more familiar with the Canadian situation, and we have Samuel Montembeault and Aiden Primo in net in the farm projected next season, assuming Carey Price returns, and that's a big if at this point. And you would have Jake Allen backing him up. So Montembeault, in my mind, is a third stringer. So you're not really upgrading as well with him. And Primo is kind of heralded as the heir apparent to Price, even though he has a lot of development to go. So I can't really speak for anyone in the Canadiens organization as being available. But I did have Samsonov on my personal list when preparing for this podcast, and I think because he had so much potential early on, and he's kind of fallen on hard times statistically. He's an RFA. He had an .896 save percentage this year, 3.02 goals against average. So, but he's just 25 in an RFA. Who knows?
I think you went through the gamut
So then, actually, since you brought him up, if Carey Price is playing next season, do you think Montreal would look at moving Jake Allen at some point?
I was just thinking of Jake Allen. Jake Allen's coming in my head and going, "What's that guy, Jake? Somebody from St. Louis." I remember.
Jake Allen would have a year left on his deal entering next season. And if Price comes back, again, a big if, because no one knows, including him, what the future holds with regard to his knee.
He's still on a contract, though. Lots of years left, right?
He's got 1 year left on his. Jake Allen has 1 year left on his.
No, Price.
Price has.
Price is under contract
4 years left.
Yeah. Well, they're stuck with that either way.
Well, if he retires, like Canadiens general manager Kent Hughes was talking about at the postmortem press conference the other day that like if Price goes on LTIR similar to what Shea Weber did, that would be an additional $10.5 million that they have to work with. Which is a mind-boggling number, but it's Marc Bergevin for you. I'm just saying that the fact that Hughes would just so much as float that as a concept, it's kind of a red flag with as to just how healthy Price is and the certain degree of certainty the Canadians have that he's going to come back. But let's assume that everything checks out, and it does. Carey Price, he's going to be 35 if my math checks out. His health obviously isn't what it used to be. Even though Samuel Montembeault, as a third stringer, he played the majority of games this season because of injuries to Price and Allen. He's still a third string goalie. He's nobody's idea I'm not trying to throw him under the bus by any stretch because he proved himself a capable. He rose to the challenge, I should say, and he played a career high in games, 38 if I believe. And, he faced a tough situation in that where, most nights the defense, he probably would have fared better if the defense hadn't even dressed because it was that tough of a situation for the Canadiens. But he should be no one's idea of a viable backup situation. especially behind Price, who would need like a 1B like Jake Allen.
Okay.
All right.
Like you need, if you're Price, you need someone to play like a good, let's say 30 games. And that's not Monty.
Yeah. No, that's kind of what I was thinking. I guess the other part of it would be, how did they feel about Caden Primo taking a step forward as well? Obviously, he had a lot of struggles this year as well, just as Montembeault did. But I mean, Primo's also a lot younger, so he's going to need more time in Laval and playing more games there before they really get a gauge on what what he is at the NHL level. So I guess that part makes a lot more sense. It probably would, if they, depending on the health of Carey Price, even it might actually make a lot of sense for them to not re-sign or not bring back Montembeault next season anyway. I mean, he is an RFA, but I think maybe if you're Montreal, you're looking at whether or not, if Price is healthy, obviously you have Price and Allen as your two guys. But if you don't have Price next season, maybe you look at, maybe they're another team that's going to be looking for another goalie to pair with Jake Allen, so that you have at least two capable goalies, and then you can have Caden Primo really as your third, who's developing in Laval.
Primo needs to stay in Laval at this point. I think that much is guaranteed. Before he got, when Primo was just coming up, Stefan Waite, the goaltending coach of the Canadiens, had said that the initial plan for Primo was for him to get 200 AHL games in before he was ready, and he hasn't reached 100 yet. So he definitely needs more development. If Price is not ready to go, then all bets are off with regard to the Canadiens' goaltending situation, because I feel as if they would need Price. I think that all things being equal, including a healthy Price, the Canadiens want to compete next season, because they don't want to put the fan base through another year like they just had. If Price can't go, you're not going to be competitive. And who knows what the future holds in net for the Canadiens. I would assume that they would go with Jake Allen and then Montembeault, like they did for the majority of this year. But they could also pursue someone via free agency, and that would, in theory, leave one less name available to the Sabres.
All right, we got a minute and a half left in this segment. Before we say goodbye to Mr. Ryan Szporer, remember, follow him, guys. He's at RSZPORER, and he works for the Hockey Writers. Got a lot of great articles. All right, Stanley Cup final predictions. Ryan, who do you got in the finals?
Jeez. I'd say I want the Panthers to win, just because they've had a lot of bad luck over the course of their franchise history. And I'd really like to see Connor McDavid get a shot. So let's say Panthers over Oilers in 5.
I love it.
5. Frank.
I love it. I want the Panthers to win too, because of Sam Reinhart. But my heart also wants Colorado to win, because I was a huge Avalanche fan growing up. Obviously the Sabres fan as well, but Joe Sakic was my favorite player growing up as well. So I always have a soft spot for Colorado to win. Ideally, I'd want a Colorado-Florida series. I don't think it's going to happen. My actual prediction, however, is the Blues and the Lightning, with the Lightning winning the Cup. And actually, no, sorry, I'm wrong. It's the Flames and the Lightning, a repeat of 2004, with the Lightning winning in 6.
All right. My prediction is the Flames beating the Rangers in the finals. I would love for Flames play Toronto in the finals. That would be just so much fun. I just think Toronto's, in Buffalo, we said, I don't hate Toronto. I grew up a Toronto fan as much as a Sabre fan, because they were in different conferences, and they were always on Saturday night. So I watched the Rick Vibes and the Bordy Solomon. So I'm not the Toronto hater that most Sabre fans are. Most people who know me know that. I think when they're in the playoffs, it's fun. I think they're fun. When Montreal's in the playoffs, when Canadian teams are in the playoffs, I think it's fun. Not so much for the Southern teams. So the Carolinas, Florida, Tampa, but I'm old, so that's how I like it. So I like the North. So I'm going to go with Calgary versus the Rangers in the finals. So, all right, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. It was great talking with you. I hope we can have you on again sometime.
Yeah, me too. It was great fun. Thanks so much.
Thanks
all right,
for coming
everybody. This is the first half of the Ranting cast. We'll be back in about 20 seconds. On the other side, we're going to have Steve Kornianis talking about with Frank about the NHL playoffs. Ryan, have a great night.
All right, back again. It's me, Frank, and Steve Kornianis is here with us. Steve, how you doing?
What's up, Frank? How you doing?
Good. Well, I got both the hockey games on. Boston, Carolina, Toronto, Tampa. Toronto is up 1-0 after the first period. Jake Muzzin gets the first goal of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Boston, Carolina, no score right now. I have 8:05 left in the second period. I'm probably a little behind because I have both games on my computer, so I'm not really. I'm usually watching on a delay, but so far, I mean, both the games have been pretty entertaining. And Toronto up 1-0 so far. I'm actually kind of surprised at that. But did you see that? Did you just see that Clifford hit on Colton?
I didn't see the clip. I saw the goal, like the screenshot from Muzzin, and then I started setting up, so I missed it. Why would happen?
Oh, Clifford boarded Ross Colton into the boards and got kicked out of the game for it. And Toronto actually killed the 5-minute penalty that they had as well. So far, I mean, they're looking kind of good so far. And so far in this Boston Carolina game, it looks like Boston's been getting a lot of the shots, but I like Carolina's shot quality a lot more in this game so far. But it's tight right now.
Yeah, the game one is a big deal. I think more in the Carolina-Boston series than the Toronto one, because not just because of the Leafs' history, that group, you know, they've won game ones before and it really didn't do anything for them. So I think game 5, 6, and 7 are the more important ones. Whereas, you know, Carolina, they're hungry like Colorado. They have not achieved their desired objective. I guess every team wants that objective, but Carolina and Colorado had those disappointments. So it's just, it sucks. You win 50-something games and win the division, and your reward is to face the Bruins.
Yeah. Or you're the Leafs and you have 115 points and your first round opponent is the 2-time defending champs.
Yeah.
But it's like, what do we do at this point? But we're going to use this segment to preview the playoffs. I mean, obviously 2 games are going on right now, but we're just going to preview the whole playoffs. Let's start with the game that started it all right now, Boston, Carolina. You know, you just mentioned game 1 going to be really tight, really important. This is the one where I see division winner losing. I actually have Boston winning this series in 6, and a lot of it is because Ullmark has been really good the last couple months for the Bruins. He's the game 1 starter for a reason, even though I think Swayman is still the future. Yeah. Ullmark's the game 1 starter, and it's not even because they signed him to the contract. He's been outplaying Swayman by a lot, and he absolutely deserved to be the game 1 starter. And for Carolina, I mean, not having Frederik Andersen is really going to hurt them. As much as I think Ranta's been pretty good, Ranta also is... He has injury troubles just as much as Ullmark does. So I like Boston in the goaltending edge in this one. I think defensively they're about the same. I give a small edge to Boston because I think Charlie McAvoy is the best defenseman in the series. Yeah. So that right there gives me a little bit of an edge. And then offensively, I think I like the Bruins because they're more top heavy and they have Pasternak on the second line playing with Haula and Hall, and that allows them to have Marchand, Bergeron, and DeBrus has actually been pretty good for them on that first line. So it kind of increases Boston's depth a little bit more, even though I think Carolina's bottom 6 might be a little bit better. I like Boston up front a lot more. So I think the Bruins are going to win this series in 6.
It's going to come down to goaltending ultimately. I think that they're pretty even. Obviously, Carolina's got the depth advantage, like you said. I think Carolina has more reliable middle pairing and bottom pairing defensemen, whereas the Bruins, you know, you talk to Bruins fans, it's funny. Like when we watch the Bruins, we're like, oh my goodness, this team is so good. But, you know, the Grizzlick and some of the other guys in the bottom pairing, they're not too confident with. But with the goaltending situation, you know, you got Ranta now, and they also have the kid Kochikov, who was really good in the AHL. So I think when you go into a series and there's your number 1, your dedicated number 1 isn't there, I see in the Bruins case, you had a little bit of a controversy between Swayman and Ullmark, but knowing Cassidy, I think he won't be the first guy to budge. I think he'll stick with his guy. Whereas I could see Brindamore going to Kochetkov if things go south with Ranta. And once you do that, then it really becomes
all bets are off.
Yeah, because you know how goalies are. It's am I starting? Am I not? Am I in? And I've talked about it before, how having a goalie controversy heading into the playoffs is no bueno if you want to win a cup. I think Carolina was the only team. If you want to count Murray and Fleury a little bit, but in my recollection, I could only think of the 2006 Hurricanes, where they had to turn to Cam Ward in the middle of that postseason run, and then he kind of ran with it. So
I remember. I mean, I don't like to remember 2006 that much as a Sabres fan.
Yeah.
But they were down 2-0 to Montreal, and they had Martin Gerber start those first two games, and then they went to Ward, and then the rest is history. I'm with you on that. I think the one thing is if Carolina ends up going to Kochetkov, it might actually work out for them though, because the one thing, I mean, he's been good, but also too, teams scout goalies. They're not going to have a ton on him, so they're not going to know where to beat him until they actually play in the game. That might work to Carolina's favor, especially if they're able to lock it down defensively. I mean, imagine if Carolina's able to lock it down defensively like they did when David Ayres played for them. Locked it down. They did lock it down. Obviously, a couple goals, but they locked it down. And I say that now Carolina just went up 1-0.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Carolina is that we think about the heavy forecheck, the pressure, the shot advantages, the tilted ice, but they're a really good defensive team, very underrated. Under Brindamore, I think they've been top 6 or 7 every year since he's been there. So it's not just and they've had different goalies. They've lost key defensemen and they've replaced them. You know, remember they brought in Tony DeAngelo and they lost Dougie Hamilton. They're like, oh my goodness, the end of the world. And not only did DeAngelo put up points, but clearly, I mean, he's not good defensively, DeAngelo, but I think that forward group is so responsible in their own end, and they could be physical as well, that it's good for a goalie. And I agree. Like, it's going to, if they need to lock it down, they will. Great penalty kill. They have a shutdown center in Jordan Staal. So it's a really good matchup. It really is.
It really is. I really like this.
I wish it wasn't at the same time as the Toronto-Tampa one, because I kind of want to focus on both series. I'm a Ranger fan, even more so than the Ranger Penguins series or the Washington, Florida. Those are my two big ones in the Eastern Conference, because I think the Cup win is going to come out of either one of those two series. Okay. Well, the Eastern Conference champion will come out of one of those two series.
Right. Okay. So let's go to the next series then. Let's go to your team. Let's go to the Rangers Penguins series. What are you thinking in that one?
Penguins have been playing like crap for a while now. I think it's going on like 2 months almost, or a month and a half. And remember last year they had the issues with Jarry. Pens fans will tell you that why did we lose the series against the Islanders? We lost because of Jarry. And I mean, it's easy to blame him, but there were a lot of things working there. The Islanders deserve more credit than that.
I think they do, but also at the same time, I mean, Jarry could not make a key save.
Yeah. You know, the Penguins are, even with the age situation, they're a really good team. So historically, Penguins Rangers have not been long series. They usually go 4 or 5 games, except for 2014. So I think the Rangers you always have to consider, like, we're just happy to be here, but they have the goalie. Whereas, you know, Pittsburgh, they have the experience in the Cups and they're a proud team, but this might be the last chance for Sullivan. I know he's a good coach and he's won Cups there, but if you look at, I think this would be the 4th straight early round knockout for them, and 3 straight first round knockouts, and it's going to be tough for them. And remember, Burke and Hextall run that team now, and Sullivan wasn't really their guy. They came in after he retired. So, you know, Crosby, could this be a Malkin swan song? He's a free agent. Letang's a free agent.
Same. Brian Russ is a free agent too.
Russ is a free agent. Yeah. So, and if they got to go to Casey DeSmith, and the Rangers might have, if let's say Shesterkin struggles a little bit, they got to go to Georgiev. I mean, but I think you're looking at a Jarry versus Shesterkin. The key is basically, can Shesterkin shut down the Pittsburgh power play? Because once you shut down the Pittsburgh power play, they're going to have a tougher time generating it 5-on-5. even
Yeah.
against the Rangers, who have an inexperienced defense. But I think it's going 6-7. My gut tells me that the Rangers, the fact that they revamped big time at the deadline to get like real playoff type players, I think that might be the edge to push them over the top, more so than having that scoring punch in either the first two lines.
Yeah, I have the Rangers in 7.
Yeah.
I think Shishkin's gonna steal a couple games in this
Sure.
series. I will never count out Pittsburgh
Yeah.
until they are done. I never will. Even no matter how they play in the regular season, it does not matter in the playoffs for them. They can change how they play. Crosby can change how he plays. He can do anything he wants to because he's just that kind of player.
2-0 Carolina.
Yeah, I just saw that 2-0. So, I mean, there you go. I don't know what's going to happen. And I'll give Casey DeSmith this. He actually hasn't been that bad since Jari's been injured. He's actually been playing pretty well as of late. I just don't know how he's going to fare in the playoffs, especially with the Rangers. I've liked what the Rangers did at the deadline too, revamping that forward core. Really, I think Frank Petrano has been was a good addition for them.
Contract year. A lot of these guys are on contract year.
Yeah. But like Lafreniere as well has been really good in the second half, and I think that's going to be a big key for them is their depth scoring going in. If Pittsburgh's able to shut down, Panarin and Zibanejad, they're going to need Lafreniere, Kakko, Ryan Strome, those kind of guys to step up and play a key role for the team going in if they want to win this series.
Is Jari hurt? I didn't see. Is he starting game 1 or is it going to be DeSmith?
I
don't
let me
put you on the spot. I didn't
know.
No,
I don't recall. I don't remember seeing. I'm gonna have to look it up really quick. I'm gonna take
about that.
No, it's good. I'm gonna take a quick look. I think he's been pushing to try to get back, but I think Casey DeSmith is starting game 1. Okay. At the very least, I think that's what's going on. But after that, I'm seeing from Deb Seymour on Twitter. I'm not. I'm gonna just double check. She's a Rangers blogger, I believe it looks like. Or at least a New York blogger. She says that Jari's gonna miss games 1 and 2. Okay. So we'll see. Right. We'll see. It could always change just because it's the playoffs. I mean, guys will be like, oh, well, they're out for next week, and then they're back in 2 days because playoffs. It just happens like that.
It's definitely not an optimal situation though for the Penguins to go into game
at
1
the very least. Yeah, at the very least, Jari looks like we'll be out for game 1. Game 2, we'll see what happens. So let's stay in the East then. Let's go to the Florida-Washington series. I have Panthers in 5. I was thinking 6, but I'm gonna stick with 5. As we know, Ron is he thinks the Caps are gonna win because of Bobrovsky. His only reason for not picking the Panthers is Bobrovsky. That's it. He's got nothing else. And even if Bobrovsky is average or below average, I think this Panthers team is just so good that they're able to overcome it. They're able to outscore their problems. Really, this is a team that averages almost 4 goals a game, and that was even before they got Claude Giroux. So I think this Washington team just revolves so much around Ovechkin that come playoff time, I mean, who else is going to be contributing? Because Backstrom really hasn't had the best year. Kuznetsov, I think, has been perfect. He's been fine this year, but he hasn't been really Kuznetsov. And like this goes for a lot with like Mantha and Oshie too. I don't know. I think this is really almost a last ride for Washington. We're getting to that for them too.
Yeah, they've been so bad in the playoffs since winning the cup. It's been back to the same old story. And you're right. It's Ovechkin. And that's why I think he should get serious consideration for the Hart. I'm not saying he should win it, but he's really been the only guy. And Carlson, too, to a degree. And they've got a good year out of Orlov, some of the defensemen. Kuznetsov kind of turned it on in the second half, but they've been so bad outside of Ovechkin that Kuznetsov, Backstrom, Oshie, they've been so MIA in these first round series the last couple of years that they brought in a new coach, Laviolette. Can he get it out of them? Like, so I don't know. I think that the Caps are going to be completely overmatched, but I think the head-to-head series this year was I think it was decent. I think the Caps might have split it, or they might even went 3-1. I could be mistaken, but if that's the case, maybe you could hang your hat on that if you're Washington. But like you said, like they're an old team, and they've got some good young players. Fayavari's made a little bit of an impact, but the defenseman, but I just they lack. They're so weird because they'll have this like 8 out of 10 game streak late in the season where you're like, oh my goodness, the Caps are red hot. Could it be another year where they make a run? But Florida, like you said, man, Florida is just loaded. And Bobrovsky is terrible. Korea, he is garbage in the playoffs. No one's going to doubt that. Korea 333 quality start percentage. It's the worst of any active goalie who's played over 20 playoff games. So he's basically bad every third game. He's good. 2/3 of he's bad, which is not good. And they have the kid Knight, who he'll be the future number 1, and he beat Tampa last year in round 1 when they called on him, albeit just one game. I think Spencer Knight has big game credibility, but he's still only 20, 21 years old. And you're paying Bobrovsky all that money. So if he can't beat the Caps, and they have one line or really one player offense, it's going to be, Florida might have to really consider it, because his 1-loss record was great. He always gets like 38-7-3 or something like that. It's phenomenal. But outside of that series he stole from Tampa, what was a 4-game sweep back in that big upset? He hasn't been good in the playoffs. So Ron's right to have his misgivings. But I just think that when you could just roll line after line, Duclair and like you said, Giroux,
Reinhardt, and then Huberto at 115 points this year too.
Yeah, Anton Lundell, the young kid.
Yeah,
it's a really good team. I think they don't get enough credit because they're flawed and people are leery, but they are a powerhouse and they could outscore you at will. So I'm gonna agree with you. I'm gonna say Caps steal one game maybe, or surprise them in maybe games 1 or 2. But that might be a wake-up call for Florida. And I think they really want to pay back Tampa Bay for last year. I think that's what the collision course is going to be eventually, something along those lines.
Yeah.
I want to see that.
Yeah, one thing that really killed Florida last year against Tampa was Bennett getting suspended too. So as long as he stays on the ice, that's going to be huge for the Panthers too.
2-0 Leafs now. Matthews power play goal.
Yeah, I saw it. He just clapped one on the power play. So then let's go to this series, Toronto-Tampa, the last one for the East. I think this series is going to be really chippy. We've seen some of it so far. Obviously, Clifford had that nasty hit on Colton that got him kicked out of the game. I think this series is going to be mid-scoring, as mostly like I could see most of these games being like 3-2, 4-3 games like that. I don't really see much 6-5 games these like really high event, well, maybe we'll see high event, but not high scoring. Yeah. I think this series a lot of it's going to come down to goaltending, and right away, Vasilevsky, the edge is there for Tampa and Vasilevsky. Obviously it's 2-0 Toronto right now, but like, we'll wait to see what games 2, 3, 4 bring too. Defensively, I give the edge to Tampa because yes, the experience. Victor Hedman, I think, is the best defenseman in this series.
Sure.
Hedman, Sergachev, McDonough, Cernak, I think is really good. I like Riley. I like Brody. I like the Giordano pickup, and Muzzin's back too, which really helps. But Tampa's defense is really big. They're very fast. And then offensively, I kind of think it's more of a wash, even though Matthews is a 60-goal scorer. I think Toronto's a better 5-on-5 team than Tampa is. But man, Tampa can just score at will, and they've turned it up in the last month of the year. They really got hot at the right time. I think this is going to be a long series. I think this series is going 7 games. I'm giving the edge to Tampa though.
Yeah, I'm liking the Leafs a lot. This let's talk regular season. Tampa Bay was too inconsistent for me this year. Now, of course, you can't count them out, but they had periods where they just didn't look like themselves, and they've had injuries in the past. They've had Kucherov miss games. They had Point miss games, but there was just something. Even Vasilevsky this year wasn't like, it didn't seem like himself. And I know it's a tough division. It's a tough conference, so it's not going to be easy every night. But they lost to some bad teams, and you have to wonder motivation-wise. Like Tampa Bay, they were super motivated last year because a lot of people were criticizing them with the asterisk.
Mhm.
Like, you won an easier type of Stanley Cup setup in the bubble with no fans and all that rest that you had. So they kind of had something to prove. And they also had those guys that had expiring contracts that you knew that they were going to go. Guys like Gord and Coleman
Goodrow
and
yeah.
Goodrow. But I like the moves they made at the deadline, getting Paul and Hagel. Paul's been better than Hagel since they got acquired, but Colton was actually pretty good for them. And hopefully he's not hurt long term. The thing is with the Leafs, though, is that I think they know this is their best shot. I mean, last year really was probably their best shot, but this year in general, in terms of the team and how they did so well against elite teams. They beat Colorado, they beat Minnesota, they beat Florida, Tampa, sometimes in humiliating fashion. So I think they know they can hang with these guys. The two X factors in the series are going to come down to two things. Number one, Campbell, right? Is Campbell, because he's a mental, he's more mental. The mental aspect of the game is bigger and more prevalent with him, I think, than any other goalie in the first round because of his, the history. And the other X factor to me is coaching, where Cooper is he's a genius. He really is. He just knows how to not only motivate his guys, but he's
3-0 Leafs.
3-0 Leafs. Okay.
Camp just scored.
Okay. So, and then Keefe, we all know.
Short-handed too.
Yeah. And Keefe, we know the yelling and the cursing, and but the Leafs are a pretty well-coached team, and they have a lot of chemistry on all four lines, and the defense pairings are pretty mobile, and they activate a ton, and they keep the ice. To me, I agree. It's going to go 7. Here's the thing. I think I'm pulling a Red Sox in 04. If the Leafs can get past the first round, if they could beat Tampa, I don't think anyone's going to stop them. And I don't want to admit that. But at the same time, I think history tells us you can't beat teams this talented down every year after year. At some point, they wake up. And usually these teams, before they win a cup, they suffer a humiliating defeat or have a humiliating season beforehand. That's what history usually tells us.
You get Tampa in 2019.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Detroit in 95, 96.
Yeah.
Where you have this, everyone's picking you to win. And even the Leafs last year, where they were playing Montreal, the worst playoff team in the league. They had a cakewalk to the cup last year. Oh, at least to the conference finals. And so I think it's going to come down to, in terms of the series itself, I think the Game 5 winner, I'll take the easy way out. Whoever wins Game 5 is going to win the series. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess the biggest worry I have for the Leafs is, can they get out of their own head? It's really all the mental side of it. I think Toronto has the most pressure on them to win, especially in this series.
Oh, of course, without a doubt.
And can they overcome that pressure is the biggest question. They haven't been able to do it before. Obviously, when they made the playoffs in 2017, they were playing with house money.
Sure.
8 seed, playing the top team in Washington. They lose in 6 games. Like, well, you put up a really good fight. You had a 2-1 series lead as well. Good job. This is a nice learning curve for you. 27, the next year, 2018, well, you lost to a really good Boston team. You came back from 3-1 to force a Game 7, nothing to look down upon. But then 2019, Tavares is there, and they had a 3-2 series lead going back home to Game 6. They blow that, and then they blow Game 7 and play probably their worst game of the series.
Yeah, it was bad.
And then the bubble playoffs happen, and they lose to Columbus in the qualifying. And that's with 2 games where both teams blew a 3-0 game, and I think it was Games 3 and 4. And then Columbus just locks it down in Game 5, and Toronto plays arguably the worst game of their series in Game 5. And then last year, and it's like that pressure to win just builds up and up, and it's like, yeah, you're right. At some point, you have to overcome that. At some point, you're going to break through. Tampa had a bunch of playoff losses as well before they went back to back.
Sure.
2019, and then they lost in the Cup in 2015 to Chicago. They lost in Pittsburgh at the East Final in 2016.
Yep.
Yeah. 2018, they lost to Washington in the conference final too. So there was a lot of pressure on them, heading into before COVID hit and everything to win in 2019, 2020. And then they win in the bubble playoffs, and then they do it again in the shortened season. So all that pressure on them to win has been lifted for a couple of years now. And really it's like, if Toronto can't get out of their own heads and really, lock it down against Tampa, because they're going to have to lock it down in some way, because Tampa's going to do it to them if they get a lead. I have a hard time seeing Toronto win. And if this series goes to 7 games, even no matter who wins game 5, if this series goes to 7 and Tampa goes up 1-0, it's over for Toronto, because they always end up playing the worst game of their series of the series in the final game. It just somehow happens. So if you're Toronto, I think you have to beat them in 6 or 5. I don't know if they're going to be able to.
The thing is, if you're a Leafs fan and if you're in the Maple Leafs room, if you're Kyle Dubas, if you're Sheldon Keefe, you could always look at the fact that last year was rock bottom. You can't get any lower than that. We have the picture of Matthews and Marner in the dressing room with their heads, hung low, like that's rock bottom. Blowing a 3-1 lead, the way that they blew it, and then the only thing that would be worse is blowing a 3-0 lead. So no matter who you blow it, if you blow a 3-0 lead against Tampa Bay, it's horrible. It's record-setting in a way, but you still could always say I'll go lose to Tampa Bay. But I agree, like the mental aspect is huge. But history has shown us teams, when they're faced with all this adversity and everybody's counting them out, the one thing that's missing in that room is a real winner, a guy who really, you want to say Muzzin with his cups, and Giordano, with his experience, but they don't have a guy in that room really that has a proven track record of resurrecting a team from the dead. You know what I mean? And that's what Dubas was kind of banking on, that this team will find a way by themselves. They try to bring in Thornton and other guys in the past, but sometimes when it's a game 7, who are you going to turn to? And I always use the Rangers as an example in '94, where everything was going against them in the conference finals and in the Stanley Cup finals. But you always had like 9,000 Edmonton Oilers with cup rings, to defer to in the event that, and a lot of the younger guys said it helped them out. But I really do think from a talent standpoint that you can make a strong case that the Maple Leafs are the more talented team, maybe not personnel-wise like the top 5 or 6 or a core nucleus, but depth-wise, I think the Leafs have a little bit of an edge there. And so just because they have 3 lines now that just roll and roll, and Tampa Bay does too. So I don't want to take anything away, but I don't want to pick the Leafs. It all has to be situational dependent. Like I said, game 5 winner wins the cup. If it's game 7, whoever scores first wins game 7, and I'll leave it at that. But I really can't pick. I mean, it's so crazy how you're in this round 1. And I really, it's almost like a crapshoot. Like it's a toss up.
It really is. I mean, I was looking at the betting too for all these series, and this one to me, it's just been the most even. I mean, really, like there's no true favorite in this series. You just really have to go with your heart almost, and it's really hard to go with this. With a lot of these series, you could just look at the stats and everything, but this one you really can't. You really just got to go with what does your heart say in this series.
Yeah.
Well, and meanwhile, Stamkos on the power play missed a wide open net. Oh man,
game 1.
It's game 1. It doesn't tell. It never tells the whole series, or it hardly ever tells the whole series.
Actually, I pulled this up from NHL.com.
Yeah.
So teams at home when they win game 1 are 344 and 114 for a 751 winning percentage.
Wow. That's the playoff series.
Yeah.
Okay.
The highest record for a team with home ice. Obviously when they go up 2-0, it's 888 winning percentage. 3-0 is 979. We know the 3. Yeah. But when you're down, let's see if it's tied 1-1 and you're the home ice team, it's only a 547 in favor of the team with the home ice advantage. So it's pretty much 50-50.
Yeah, at that point, yeah.
If Tampa could come away and win game 2, I know this game's not over yet.
It just shows how important getting that road win is.
Yeah, games 2 and 3 have always been. We always talk about game 5. Game 1 is important, and obviously, 751 winning percentage says so. But it seems like even last year we've had games with team 1 game 1, you get all excited, and then you end up losing the series every year. And I've learned these at my team when they win game 1. It's like, oh my goodness, what a great start! But that just seems to motivate the other team more, and
if there's any team that doesn't need the motivation, it's Tampa.
Yeah,
Toronto cannot be giving Tampa any sort of motivation to come back. That's the thing.
No.
So let's go over to the West now. Let's look at the West playoff series. Let's look at the first one, Colorado and Nashville. Without UC Saros, I don't think Nashville stands a chance. I think this is a 5-game series. If I had to pick a series to be a sweep, however, I would pick this one if Saros is out the whole time. I think he's only going to be out games 1 and 2. So maybe if he's back for game 3, then maybe Nashville steals one at the very least. But I see this as a 5-game series. Colorado is going to dominate.
Yeah, I see it as a 4 or 5 game series, either a sweep. When you have to factor in the altitude, right? So Preds go there. I think it's going to be automatic down 2-0 heading back to Nashville.
Yeah, especially without Saros.
Now some might say that, well, you got to worry about rust with Saros, but he played so much this year that he actually might be welcoming this rest, because remember last year against Carolina, he was stealing games like crazy, and Carolina was a powerhouse, and it was a very entertaining series. Even though it didn't go 7. But all those overtime games, and so I think that the Preds know that they can hang with the big boys if they need to. They didn't make that many changes in terms of their personnel. I mean, they lost Ellis in the offseason last season, but I like the fact that Johansson and Forsberg and Duchesne all had bounce back years. They have the Herd line, which is one of the.
Yeah, I was going to say, Duchesne quietly 40-goal season. I mean, no one really talked about him.
Well, he was so bad last year after he signed that big contract that I'm glad that he probably worked extra hard in the offseason.
Huge bounce back. I mean, really, really good for that. Really good for him. Good for Nat, and really good for Nashville. And then I think another guy you're probably going to mention too is Tanner Jeannot. Rookie year for him. He scores 25 goals, and and that dude's a pest too. So he's a guy who I think Nashville's going to deploy to get under the skin of guys like Nathan McKinnon most of the time.
Good luck. I mean, that team is a machine. Yeah. And when you have that mobile defense, you got like 4 or 5 defensemen who could activate at a moment's notice, go end to end, activate off draws. It's almost like having a whole bunch of like 5 skill forwards every shift. And I just don't think that Nashville could sustain that kind of pressure. Last year, Carolina did that to them, but Saros was able to steal games. What's the guy's name? Connor Ingram, is he the guy?
Yeah, he's gonna be the backup while Saros is out.
Yeah, so if you're gonna rely, he was good in Milwaukee this year.
Yep.
And Preds fans, they like him. They're comfortable with him as a backup, and he's a nice story. He's kind of a resiliency kind of story. But again, it's just, I mean, Colorado, man. I mean, the McKinnon, the look in their eyes, the pressure, the bad taste in their mouths from previous years. They just and I think they're going to get Landeskog back, or if they have,
they're going to get him back soon, I think.
Yeah, so it's an avalanche of talent, and the Preds have no chance. They have no chance unless Saros steals 4 straight games or 5 straight games or whatever.
It's gonna have to. It would have to be that. All right, so let's go over to the other series then in the Central, Minnesota, St. Louis. I love this series a lot. I think this is good. This series is going to be really fun. I think it's going to be very high event in my opinion. I mean, last couple of games that these two teams have played, scores are really high. I went to one of the games is I think 6-5.
Sure. Yeah.
And overtime too. So like I could see this series being very high scoring most of the time. I'm giving the edge to St. Louis. Yeah. I think I have them in 7. Mostly because I like their forward depth a bit more than I do Minnesota's, especially at the center position. Minnesota, as much as Ryan Hartman has been a godsend for them this year, 34 goals for him, unbelievable. Sure. Freddie Gaudreau has been like a pretty good middle six forward for them too. And then I love Joel Eriksson-Ek as a middle six center as well. But not having that top high end center, I think it's going to really bite Minnesota. They're a team that's just driven by their wingers offensively. Obviously, when you have Kirill Kaprizov, that's going to happen. Matt Zuccarello, I think, is going to be playing in game one. I think he was battling an injury, and they're going to have Marcus Foligno back as well. He had been hurt for a little while too, so he's going to bring a lot of nastiness as we all know. But I like St. Louis's forward depth a bit more, especially when Braden Schen's healthy. I'm expecting that when Kaprizov, Hartman, and Zuccarello, which is Minnesota's first line, is out there, Ryan O'Reilly is going to be out there defending against them, and we know just how good of a defensive forward he is. He hasn't had the best season offensively, but defensively, he's going to be just fine. I'm saying St. Louis in 7.
Yeah, you have to. The thing is with these two teams is they're actually playing meaningful games because they were battling for that second seed for about a week and a half. So it was almost like they were playing for their playoff lives, although it wasn't. They already had the spot solidified, at least a playoff spot. But they were, you on home ice, and so ultimately it went down to Minnesota. Odd that they're going to start the series at 9:30 Eastern time. Are they crazy? It's so I know why they're doing it. I think that series is starts tonight, so they don't want to interfere with Toronto, Tampa, which is their big one. It looks like ESPN is treating it as their big one. But yeah, it's going to come down to who did they announce who the starter for game one is? Is it going to be?
I think it's Fleury versus Husso.
Okay, so that's interesting because Binnington he had a rebound year this year, but he's been really bad the last couple of postseasons. He got outplayed by Demko and a little bit of Markstrom in 2020. He was, shaky last year as well. And so with this year, Talbot was pretty good against Vegas last year. That was a great series, by the way. That was 7 games.
Yeah.
And game 7 was close until, what's it called? The floodgates opened for Vegas. But I thought Talbot was good. So, Fleury, I mean, I don't know. He's able to steal a series, I guess, but I agree with you that St. Louis's forward depth is really good, but Minnesota basically has like 2 borderline near elite checking lines, but they're scoring lines who check. So you got the Eriksson-Ek and Greenway, and I forgot that is it Foligno on the other?
Foligno's
line?
on the line
and
too.
then even Boldy's a good defensive player.
I love Boldy I love Boldy as a prospect.
Yeah, he's great, and so defensively, the Blues have the experience on their blue line. Whereas, Minnesota, they went out, they added Kulikov and they added Goligoski, I think, too.
Yeah. And then they added Middleton at the deadline.
All right. And so he's the physical presence. And the other guy, did they add the guy from Anaheim? Is it Delorier?
Yeah, they traded for Delorier, too.
And he's so it's going to be a fun series. I really can't think of it. I think that I'm going to give the edge to Minnesota only because they have home ice for game 7. But,
okay.
But I with the Husso Binnington versus Talbot, Fleury, it really is. You could see all 4 goalies playing this series. So, to me, I'm thinking more of like the mental aspect of it. Like Minnesota's so freaking tired of losing in round 1 or round 2. This is the best team they've probably had, and they have home ice in round 1, so that maybe that'll be enough to push them over the edge.
Yeah. I'm not sure about all 4 goalies playing. I can certainly see Talbot and Fleury both playing. I think St. Louis is going to just run with Husso, kind of like how they ran with Binnington back in 2019. He's just been so bad this year. I don't see, unless Husso gets hurt, I don't really see any way St. Louis would pull him unless he's just literally god awful and he allows like 5 goals and each of the first 2 games and they're down 2-0 in the series. I really have a hard time thinking that they're just gonna run with Husso the whole time. Quick scoring update, by the way. Boston just scored, so it's 2-1 Hurricanes Taylor Hall, and then Mitch Marner just scored, so it's 4-0 Leafs.
Marner scored a goal. All right, so that's good for the Maple Leafs.
Matthews and Marner have scored tonight. Yeah. That's great because all you're doing is giving Tampa more motivation in game 2.
We'll see. Got to win.
All you're doing is pissing them off more. That's really it. All right. Calgary, Dallas. I like Calgary in 6. I think Dallas is going to put up a bigger fight than I think people are making them out to be.
Oh yeah, talented team.
Talented team. Rupe Hintz and Jason Robertson are awesome. Robertson's a 40 goal scorer. I think Rupe Hintz scored 37 this year.
Yep.
They don't have to rely on Sagan and Ben anymore. Really great. And then Heiskanen and Klingberg on the back end really helps too. I love Jake Ottinger. I think this series goes 6 because Ottinger's going to steal a couple games.
I think if I'm going to pull an upset special in the playoffs, that's my upset special. Now Dallas is considered to be a one-line team. If you had Pavelski, right? So Pavelski, Hintz, and Robertson. And stats-wise, yes, they're a one-line team. And if you want to put Ben, Sagan, and maybe Nemestikov on the second line, there's a little bit of a drop-off. But remember, Gurianov is a depth guy. He's proven that he could score in the playoffs. He was big for them a couple of years ago when they went on that run.
Yep.
They went out, they got Glendening from Detroit to help out in faceoff. So, I mean, he had a really bad game against Vegas the other day, but he's actually pretty good. So I like their forwards, but the key thing for Dallas is that defense. Like that defense acts like almost like 2 scoring lines. And a guy who really surprised me this year was Ryan Suter. I thought he was done. I'm like, he's slow. He looked kind of like he was trending downward, but they actually have 5 defensemen who can move the puck. They got Klingberg, Heiskanen, Suter, Lindell, and then the kid Hawley, the first round pick. I was really critical of that kid in his draft year. Has really blossomed into a very good NHL defenseman. He could rush the puck. He's got a long stick. He breaks up plays. So I think I said this on one of my podcasts. Like, if you're Calgary, if you're Sutter, what do you target? If you shut down the top line, you got to deal with that defense. I think that I would just try to shut down try to limit the defense's ability to rush the puck out of the zone, and maybe run the risk of that top line beating you. But that's where a guy like Markstrom would come into play. But Calgary's a really good freaking team.
They're so good possession wise too that it's going to be hard for Dallas to really maintain a lot of offense. They're going to have to be very opportunistic with their offense.
Sure.
If they want any chance. And I say 6 just because of Jake Ottinger. I can easily see this series being 5. I'm intrigued by the idea of the upset and Dallas winning. I just think Calgary's so good that I don't really see an upset here. And Dallas, I mean, they almost blew it. Down the stretch. Did. I mean, that they lost that key game to Arizona. They blew that key game to Arizona too. Really almost took them out of the playoff pitch. This could have easily been Vegas in this spot. And I thought Dallas got unlucky.
The only thing I think, one of the key things though for Dallas though is that they've been down this road before. They're only 2 years removed from a Stanley Cup final. Obviously non-standard conditions with the bubble and everything, but Ottinger looked really good down the stretch for them. He made some big saves. The game against Vegas was huge, and he was a stud. The shootouts, he's stopping all the shooouts attempts. So, obviously Calgary's deserves to be favored. I think they'll win, but I think it's going 6 or 7. I think Dallas is going to pull a surprise win, maybe in game 1, maybe in game 2, and go back to Big D tied 1-1, and then that's when you're going to go punch for punch and have an extended series.
Yeah, I say 6 because of that. And Calgary's not going to have Sean Monahan as well.
Yeah, he's done hip surgery. I think another.
He's done for the year.
Yeah, he's done.
Okay, yeah, I thought so. I thought I remember seeing that. So
he's been playing hurt too. So I feel bad. I've been criticizing the guy for vanishing off the face of the earth. He's one from the most consistent forwards in the game, with his production, goals, and points, to just nothing. And it turns out he was playing with a bad hit for 2 seasons and shut it down.
Yeah. I guess the one thing that maybe would concern me with Calgary would be their depth. Then without Monahan, I mean, him being on the third, if he was playing on the third line with like Dylan Dubé and Blake Holman, I feel so good if I'm Calgary. But they traded a lot for Yarncroc, but he really hasn't produced a lot since getting there.
They got for the playoffs.
They got him for the playoffs. We'll see if he steps up. So let's go to the last playoff matchup. Edmonton, LA. A third team from the Pacific had to get in. We all thought obviously Vegas would, but a third team had to get in. I don't think they last very long. I think this series goes 5. I'm taking Edmonton to win this series.
Yeah, I think the Oilers win. One thing to keep an eye on, though, is Jonathan Quick played his best hockey this season down the stretch.
Yeah.
And he essentially told Peterson, you're the backup. And, they have a proud group, no doubty. That hurts. The defense is very green. They've been using mostly prospects on the blue line outside of Oli Mata and then Roy. But, other than that, I mean, they've been playing Moverari, they've been playing Spence, Dursey, Mike Anderson. I mean, Dursey, Mike Anderson are very good. Spence has been very good too. But these are really young kids. And I don't think any of them have any type of significant playoff experience outside of the AHL or junior hockey. So that's going to put – now they got Deneau. I think he's going to come into play because Kopitar, elite shutdown, elite Selke caliber kind of a center. Deneau, one of the best defensive centers in the game, good on faceoffs. So that might help them, but you're not going to stop McDavid. You're not going to stop Draisaitl. And oh, by the way, Mike Smith is playing the best hockey of his career, probably since he took Arizona to the freaking
man. Insane to think too. And I mean, one of my friends is a Oilers writer as well, and he's every time he talks, he's like, "Hey, you want to trade for Mike Smith?" Every time. I mean, sometimes he's joking, but like at the same time, like he's never been that big on Mike Smith, but he's playing really well right now. And yeah, I think I say Edmonton in 5.
Yeah.
If there's anything that I can give the Kings to where they might have a shot, is they're the ones playing with house money. Yeah. They don't have pressure on them to win. Whereas I think there's pressure on Edmonton to not only win a playoff round, but I think win multiple playoff rounds.
Yeah.
So if anything, it's to be the same thing with like Toronto. The mental side is going to kick in, and Kopitar has won 2 cups. Brown, this is his last ride. He's retiring at the end of the year. He's won a couple cups. Obviously, no Doughty, so that stinks. But Deneau was just in the cup final last season with Montreal, and then obviously Quick has won a couple cups. Edler's an experienced guy.
Yeah, I forgot about Edler.
Yeah. So there is experience on this LA team where they know how to win in the playoffs. I think for LA, the age is going to catch up to them. Once their younger guys start taking more prominent roles, then I think they'll start taking more steps forward. And then, I don't see LA stopping Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah, it's going to be a short series, I think. I think Quick at some point is going to just break down. Like, he's been playing really well lately. I mean, and playing a lot.
Great, yeah.
I'll tell you one thing. If the Kings do not wear the old school Gretzky jerseys, the original black and silver, if they don't wear at least one game, I will never give that team credit for the rest of it. This is Edmonton, LA. Like, you have to rekindle that rivalry. It was great. I remember the most penalty minutes in a game ever was Kings Oilers in March of 1990. It was like 250 minutes, brawls everywhere. God. And so Miracle on Manchester, and the 88-89 when Gretzky knocked out the Oilers, and then the Oilers returned the favor the next year, and when they won the cup. I mean, it's a lot of history. They haven't played in a while, so I'm hoping that they at least try to do something fun, for old guys like myself. Bring back some of the old guys for game 1, have an introduction. I don't know. But I'm excited for it. It's going to be a short series. I think the Oilers know.
Yeah.
Last year, it was an embarrassment to get swept. Hellebuck's good, but they get swept in the first round. And then before that, remember, they lost to freaking Chicago in the round.
Qualifying. Yeah.
Yeah. So they tasted it. McDavid tasted it back in 17. Or was it 2018? I forgot when they.
No, it was 17. You're right.
Yeah. So they've tasted it. I like the moves that they've made. They're getting good play out of the young kids like Puljujarvi and Yamamoto. They went in. They got Hyman. It's a really good team. I like the way they're playing. And then of course Evander Kane. They've been like playing outstanding since they got him, and he's been scoring.
Yeah, he's been good. Yeah,
playing for a contract too, by the way.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Okay, so that's all the first round matchups. That's all we're gonna do is preview those. But now right as we end the show, what is your cup final and who do you have winning?
All right, and I'm not doing this to be controversial. It's just a gut feeling. I think Toronto finally gets there.
Okay.
I think Toronto gets to the Stanley Cup final. It's going to be against Colorado, and
Mm.
Colorado is going to destroy them in the Stanley Cup final, and that's it. That's what I think. I think it's going to be bittersweet. So you won your first round playoff game. The fans are going to go nuts, but there is nothing stopping Colorado this year. There's nothing stopping them. Nothing.
So, really quick, I'll obviously, 3-1 Hurricanes now. Teravainen scored. My Stanley Cup is a rematch of a series from a while ago. It is an 0-4 rematch. I'm going Calgary, Tampa.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I think part 2 happens. Tampa wins. I think they three-peat. I don't like picking the champ to repeats, but even though they're down 4-0 right now, that doesn't matter.
Nah, it's game 1.
It's game 1.
If you're down 4-0 in game 2, different story.
Yeah, difference. Oh yeah, of course. Toronto, I think, is the one team that poses the biggest threat to Tampa. As much as I love Florida, as much as I want Florida to win because I want Sam Reinhart to lift a cup, I'd love to see Bobrovsky lift a cup too. Huberdeau is one of my favorite players as well. Tampa could shut them down. There's not another team in the East that I think can stop Tampa. I think Colorado or Calgary would pose the biggest threats to the Lightning three-peating. But at the end of the day, I think Tampa overcomes it. I think they three-peats. I don't like it. I'm going with my gut. I'm going with a gut feeling that they're the ones who do it. If there's any team that could, it's already hard enough to win back-to-back. If there's any team that could three-peats out of, with the makeup of all these teams now, Tampa's the one I think that does it. If it's a Tampa Calgary, I would take the Lightning in 6.
Yeah, I mean, I hate doubting Tampa because they just do everything right. They draft right. They make the right trades. They just everything works out. They lose Yzerman to GM. They bring in Brisebois and they win cups. Now, of course, Yzerman had a little bit to do with that. But still, it's the only issue. I would have picked Tampa if Tampa Bay played the way they played, let's say the last couple of weeks of the season, all season long, and you got a great season out of Stamkos. Really, I mean,
first 100-point year.
Yeah, first 100-point season, and easily, he's marching his way to the Hall of Fame. And now, I guess the X factor really is going to be Kucherov, because he's a guy that he's easily one of the top 3 or 4 players in the game when healthy. He's been that, but it seems like we're always talking about Point, always talking about Hedman, always talking about Stamkos. But Kucherov is a guy that could take over a series by himself, and he could win you a game by himself. So I hate counting him out, but this is going to be it's almost like similar to what I said about the Leafs. If Tampa could overcome and withstand the Maple Leaf pressure, right? The constant. I mean, the Leafs, when they're rolling, they're rolling. If they could beat them, then that's like, oh God, we made it. And now, all right, we could beat Florida, Carolina. We've beaten them before. If they play the
Boston,
Rangers, I don't see anyone posing a real threat. So I think the league would want not counting markets and viewership and ratings. I think Tampa, Colorado would be a Stanley Cup final that would really, you're getting the 2 best teams in the game. Florida, Colorado, right? You get the rematch from
96, yeah.
And maybe the year they're at, bring that back. But it's going to be either Tampa or Toronto that go to the Cup for the East. But something just tells me that the Leafs this year, I think they've had enough. And man, I've bashed Dubas for so long. I feel like I feel bad for him in a way sometimes because he always looks so stressed out. But it's going to be fun. I mean, these are really good series. I think we had a really good regular season. We had a really good playoff race in the West. We had really good stories in the East with all these 50-win teams. It sucks though for teams like the Sabres and Ottawa who are rebuilding the right way and then making noise. And now you got to hope that one of, let's say, Washington or Pittsburgh or maybe Boston falls off, or maybe the Rangers were a fluke. Because I'd like to see some new blood in the playoffs. In the East, it's been, Rangers replaced the Islanders, but it's always been the same teams: Pittsburgh, Washington, Boston, Pittsburgh, Washington, Boston, not Tampa. I want some new blood in there to mix it up a little bit. We need a Cinderella story.
Yeah, and I guess recently you can count Florida as that new blood as well, because they made the playoffs last year, but before that, I mean, they only really had a couple playoff appearances over the
But they've never
millennia.
been bad. Florida's never been embarrassingly bad. Yeah, they got Ekblad first overall in 14, but they've always been like, they had Gallant there. They've always been like an 88 to like 92 win team. Then they get 100 points. Then they miss the playoffs because they have 85 points. And so they've always had a steady core. Whereas, some teams really were at the bottom, like a Pittsburgh or like a Washington. Tampa Bay was never really at the bottom, although getting Stamkos had been back years. That was a pretty rough run for them before that. But yeah, it's been great. I'm looking forward to it. I see Jarvis was the guy that opened the scoring for Carolina.
He did.
But yeah, I'm getting ready. I'm getting psyched because we got St. Louis, Minnesota about the puck drop. So
yeah, and there's I have about 9 minutes left in the Bruins Hurricanes game. Boston's on the power play. So yeah, I this is one of my favorite times of the year. I love playoff hockey.
Baseball, the day draft. It's a great time to be a sports fan. This time in like September, October, my two favorite times of year.
Yeah. The day the Sabres are back in it too, just going to increase all the hype for me at least. But playoff hockey in its own right, in any league, really, it doesn't even have to be NHL. I love just the concept of playoff hockey.
Do or die, yeah. And the players, they get extra money, so it's not like they play for pride and they want to win, but they get extra money, so they want to get that extra money.
Oh yeah,
the playoff share. So it's extra motivation.
Yeah, one of the best times of the year to be a hockey fan. I really do enjoy it. Well, that's going to be it for the Ranting Cat. So just you and me, Steve. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it was a great talk, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll definitely do this again next week. We'll see how the series are going. We'll try to get into some more Sabres talk as well as the weeks go by. We got the draft coming up in a couple months, July 7th.
Lottery in 8 days.
Yeah, lottery is in 8 days. So, we could definitely be talking about that as well. So a lot of stuff to look forward to. Really going to enjoy it. Steve, you have a great night. Let's enjoy some more playoff hockey, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, Frank. Take care.
Take care.